So there's this idea that humans are fundamentally different from non-human animals. So what types of people say that humans are different? Could we turn on the front ones? For you too, like it's hard. Yeah, good. All right, so humans are different according to whom? Who says that humans are different?
Humans.
Humans say that we're different. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, we can't exactly ask like a great white shark if it's different from us in the same way that we can respond. Yeah. So like which types of people say it?
Most of the people.
Most of the people.
That's the idea of common.
Okay, creation.
It's a common idea.
Huh?
Creationists.
Creationalists? Okay, so I think creationist is the word that you're looking for. But lots of religions say that there's a fundamental distinction between humans and animals, right? That man is somehow different. He's higher than the animals are. And because of this, man has dominion, meaning that he has control over the animals, right? This is why we have cows that we bring to eat their egg, not cows bringing us to eat our egg. So religions say this. Also, politicians and laws say this, right? This isn't just a religious idea, so the idea that it's strictly a religious thing is totally wrong. Laws are based on this. What types of laws differentiate between humans and non-human animals? What can you do with animals that you can't do with people?
Human rights. There's no animal rights.
There actually are some animal rights. I mean, depending on what country you're in, there are different types of animal rights.
If I kill an animal, I'm free.
Yeah, if you kill an animal, it's legal in the right situations, depending on which country that you're in. I mean, in America, there are a lot of people that support animal rights, and when you do research with animals, you can kill them, but you just can't go out and like say, oh, I'm going to kill some animals today. You'll get arrested for that. But you can kill animals, like we do it all the time. We eat beef, we eat pork, chicken, fish. We kill animals and eat them, right? You guys have meat too. You guys are made of muscles. Muscles taste good. I don't know about human muscles. I haven't tried. I'm not going to try. But we don't cut up people normally, right? There's this legal precedence that you don't do this. Occasionally people do this in situations where there are really limited resources. So in Liberia, when there were some food shortages, there's some reports of cannibalism. People who get in airplane accidents, in mountains that are lost for months at a time, occasionally resort to cannibalism and things like this. But most laws say no, you don't eat people. You eat, cows and sheep and other things. And even common sense. So Ubedullah said, well, most people, right? Most people would include the non-religious, the non-politicians, and everyone. It needs dog. Yeah, of course we're different. Look at me. Look at the dog. Is this even a question? Why do we have this class? What a stupid lecture. So, what is it maybe that makes us special? Are there things that make us special?
Minds.
Our minds are special.
Language.
Our abilities are special, and the minds control our abilities, right? The mind's relationship with behavior. So, there's this famous French philosopher named Descartes, and he had this idea about dualism. And I think we may have talked briefly about dualism before. So, what was dualism about? Yeah?
Body, spirit.
A distinction between the body and the spirit or the soul, right? A difference between the body, which is thought to be animalistic, even maybe sort of an organic type of robot, right? You give dogs powder and they start salivating, right? It's like a robot. You do this, you press this button, they do one thing. You press these other buttons, they do something else, right? And humans are different because we have this thing that's more than just this body responding to the stimuli around us. We have this mind, right? We have this brain which allows us free will, or the ability to. I guess that is free will. Sorry. So let's just stick with free will. All right. So there's this distinction between the mind and the body, or the spirit and the body. The difference between reason and reflex, right? I don't do things that I might want to do right now. Like, oh man, I ate a lot of food last night and my stomach's really upset, so I really want to fart right now. Right? So my reflex is to let a big one fly. But my reason is telling me that this is not a good idea, right? So I'm able to overcome my animalistic urges because of the brain that I have. So this idea, this dualism, is consistent with all of the Abrahamic religious teachings, right? Humans are different from animals. So these basic ideas about human superiority and human uniqueness are still prevalent. Like Vidula said, most people have these ideas that humans are different from animals. We're unique. And a lot of people, a lot of those individuals would say, not only are we unique, but we are superior. We are the superior animal. So, if we are unique, what is it that makes us unique? So, people have said our mind makes us unique, our abilities make us unique. So, what abilities do we have that make us unique, or that people think make us unique? If you did the study guide, hopefully you should be saying, well, not really much, but what do people think?
Art.
Art, right? Humans, we create art. That picture of Descartes that you saw earlier, that was made by a human. We have these pretty, or maybe not so pretty, depending on your taste, these decorations on the windows. We have this nice orange floor. Why? So it looks nice. So it's aesthetically pleasing. Most people would say, you know, the animals, they don't do art. What other things?
Sophisticated language.
Sophisticated language. So we have really, really sophisticated language. In fact, we have language abilities that are so sophisticated that we have developed writing systems where we can communicate with generations that aren't alive today. Right? Do animals have language? A lot of people would say no. Animals don't have language. What other things? Music. We make music. A symphony. Sentam Ereme. Or who was the person that they thought was really pretty in that hypnosis? Britney Spears, right? So we make music. Do animals make music? No, they don't really make music. They're just sort of doing reflexive things. What else? Self-awareness. So one of the big things that people point to, they say that humans were aware of ourselves. I know I'm William. I look in the mirror and I don't say, who's that? I say, oh, that's William. Joke opposite. So we're aware of ourselves, and people think that the dogs aren't really aware of themselves. They're just sort of reacting to whatever's in their environment at the time. So we have a lot of things that people argue make us unique. So they say that humans, we have emotion. Animals, they don't have emotion. Humans, we have self-awareness, we have language, we have art, we have culture. Animals, they don't have those things. We use tools. I'm using tools to, navigate through my PowerPoint slides. Animals don't use tools. We engage in war. Like, there are movies made about, the sharks versus the octopi or the squid or whatever. They're at war. But, come on. It's not that the sharks are at war with squid. It's that, the shark is hungry and needs something to eat. Sees a squid, boom, tries to get it. Or maybe shark is a bad example. It's the sperm whales. They eat a lot of squid. All right, sex beyond procreation. A lot of people make moral arguments about human sexuality. And they say that, people should only have sex, males should only have sex with females. That's how God intended it. And look, in the real world, in the natural world, in the non-human world, the animals, when they have sex, they do it to procreate. So it's male animals and female animals, right? Having sex to procreate. So we're different in our sexual behavior because we don't just have sex to procreate, we do it to have fun. We do it to make money. We do it for lots of reasons other than just making babies. Also religion. People were religious. Believe in Allah or Yahweh or Jesus or Buddha, right? We believe in these different conceptions of God and maybe what the external world is, reincarnation, whatever have you. And animals, they don't have this, right? It's just, they're there, they're looking for food, they're looking for mates. That's it. That's it.
What's the definition of culture?
What is the definition of culture? Oh man, that's a good question. Does anyone want to give a definition of culture?
No. It's the
I think way of life.
Human production.
No.
I like his definition, like a way of life. It's sort of a common understanding. This is bad. Please Google this. Because like some of these questions are really hard. What exactly is culture? It's a way that humans that are living with one another sort of decide how to act, the things that are valuable, the things that are not valuable. I came from the States, and one of my first experiences here in this different culture really, really upset me. So I was meeting some students who we were trying to say, oh, you should come to Istanbul Shahir University. This is going to be a great school. And after meeting all the students, I would extend my hand. And I would say, it's been very nice to meet you. And I do this. I do it with the guys, and they shake my hands. I do it with some women, and they shake my hands. And then some women, like, I put out my hand, and they were so smooth. They were so smooth. Like, I put out my hand, and like, they saw it coming. And they're like, and I thought, like, okay. You know, she didn't see that I was trying to shake her hand. Whatever. But then this happened again. And this like continued to happen. And I'm like, what is going on? Did I say something rude? Have I offended them? And I talked with Leaf, and I'm like, Leaf, I don't know what's going on, you know? I have all of these women and they're not shaking my hands. And she's like, oh, no big deal. This is, you know, it's related to religion. So there are some Muslims who believe that men and women who aren't related and aren't married shouldn't touch. And I said, oh, no problem. Right? It's a different cultural thing. And if you don't know the culture, this shared set of rules used by a group of people in a common area, you can offend people really easily. So there's this really offensive symbol in Turkey. I'm going to show it if you don't want to see it. Close your eyes. It's this. So I guess it's the equivalent to this in the States. But my wife, for whatever reason, like she used to walk around like this. You know, she just walked like this, or she's drinking her cup of coffee at Starbucks, and she has her hand out like this. No offense meant, you know, she didn't know that this meant something offensive. Just like kids sometimes. Kids, oh, this is so cute. I wish I could have gotten a video of this. But when my daughter Ada was learning how to count, she would go 1, 2. You know, she doesn't understand that this is culturally inappropriate, right? Does that help about what culture sort of
I
is?
asked this because when you say animals don't have culture, then animals have their own culture.
Wow, that's very interesting. So animals have culture, eh?
It's not something culture.
Because if it's a way of life, they get together, they have their, I don't know, they group with each other, they survive with each other, there's a chief, there's like...
Ooh, that's interesting. So he's saying that animals, they, you know, they have groups. So not animals are like the lone wolf. You know, they're out on their own, trying to survive. You know, there are groups that are in packs. And in these packs, there's often a leader of the pack, the dominant male, the dominant female. Right? So there is some suggestion that they might have some culture, yeah.
I think for all of those things on the board, we could say animals do have some sort of similar thing for each of them, but I think the difference is the complication. When you come to human case, it is complicated, it is advanced.
Yeah, so that's...
Dolphins have sort of language, a lot of actually animals have a sort of sign language or whatever, they use some sounds, and they do have some way of communication.
Did everyone hear what you said?
Yes.
Because this is basically the whole idea behind today's lecture. Is that humans share all of these abilities to some extent with animals. And it's not so much of a difference of we have language and animals don't, but it's a matter of extent. We have more advanced language, at least as far as we're able to tell so far. We have language that allows us to communicate through generations. And I'm not so sure if the So it's not that we have language and they don't, but we have a different type of language than they do. So in all these situations, asking if humans are different from animals, what's the null hypothesis?
Humans are not.
That's exactly right. So the null hypothesis would be that we're no different from animals, right? So we're going to look and see if we're that different or not. How could someone investigate whether we're different? I'm not sure why that's cut off a little bit. Is there any theoretical reason we have to investigate? So good science is based off of theories. You don't just say, oh, what would happen if I do this? You say, aha, I think this is the way the world works. So given this idea about the way the world works, I'm going to make this prediction. Now, can we test it? So is there any reason that we should have to look at these types of questions based on science? So in the dictionary, who comes before Descartes?
Darwin.
So there's a slide.
Darwin.
Darwin comes before Descartes. In the dictionary, in time, actually, Descartes was pre-Darwinian. But let's take a look at evolution. So what's the theory of evolution?
Changing of process.
They're changing in what?
Changing of your genes process.
It's a process whereby genes change over time. And what do genes do? What are genes responsible for?
Make unique.
Yeah, the genes are responsible for making you the person that you are, in addition to the environment as well, right? My skin is this color based on the genes that I have. His skin is that color based on the genes that he has. But if I go out in the sun, my skin color is going to change, right? Because there's this interaction between the genes and the environment. But the genes are responsible for, why males are different from females. And why I'm different from Nadia or Allah, right? I have different genes. Now I also have different environments as well. But so evolution is about how these genes get passed on over time and how changes develop over time. So evolution is based on three ideas. Heredity, what else? Natural selection, variability. Good. So we've got heredity, variation. These have to do with genes. So before Darwin, there were some people who thought that evolution worked in a different way. They thought that like giraffes had a tall neck because they would try to stretch a lot. And by stretching a lot, then their kids were able to have longer necks too. But there's a story about how the elephant got its long nose, right? So it was at the river and then a crocodile jumped up. It used to have a little tiny nose. The crocodile grabbed it and pulled, trying to eat it, and it stretched out the nose. So because this happened to it, now all elephants have long noses. So these ideas are known as sort of Lamarckian evolution. Darwinian evolution is different. The idea was that we have these heritable units. He didn't know about genes and DNA yet. But we have something that we're able to pass on to our offspring. So that's the heredity part. The variability part comes in with the different things that we can pass on to our offspring. So, I have male genes, she has female genes. What would our offspring be if we were to make? Some would be male, some would be female, right? The genes get recombined. Not only that, but there are other things that happen during the process of making the egg and sperm cells. So not only do the genes split up, but they mix together and parts of the genes get swapped with one another. This leads to mutations, which increases the variability. Now, the whole idea is that there are these organisms living in some environment. And there are some genes that create differences that are good in that environment. So maybe there's an environment where there's not much food. And you have a gene that's related to your metabolism. Basically, how much food you need to take in order to survive. If you don't have a lot of food, what gene would be better to have? One that is, requiring a lot of calories, or one that's requiring a little? Yeah, so in a situation like that, it would be good to have genes that require little calories. Does Does that make sense? So individuals with those particular genes would be more likely to survive, right? What else would they be more likely to do? If they survive, they'll have the opportunity to reproduce, right? So the ones that are surviving based on the genes that they have working in the particular environment, they're able to reproduce more than those that are having difficulties surviving. Does that make sense? So this is where selection comes in. And there's more than just natural selection. So natural selection is related to things like finding food or evading predators, right? Your ability to run fast when you hear a tiger. Your ability to develop color vision so you can tell when fruit is ripe and when it's not, right? But there's also sexual selection, which is related to things like what type of person you find attractive. So things like peacocks. Peacocks, like, this is sort of odd. Why would a peacock be naturally selected for? It has these really big bright feathers. They're huge. Makes it hard for them to get around. This should increase the chances that they get eaten, right? But why do the peacocks have these beautiful tails? What does it help them do? Helps them attract mates. So when they're looking to find, when the male peacocks are looking to find a female peacock, the females are very choosy. They're like, your tail is sort of drab. That's no big deal. Wow, yours is really nice. You're choke shitting. I'm going to take you. This is also a form of selection. All right, so anyway, according to evolution, the idea is that we all come from a common ancestor. This is the theory of common descent. We all share an ancestor somewhere down the line. And we're just different because we've been brought up in different environments where there were different selective forces trying to select different attributes. So there's some important implications of this. If we're derived from a common ancestor, this means one that we share genes with other organisms. And if genes are responsible for making us be the colors we are and having the memories that we have, then this means that we should share common traits as well with other animals. Not only physical traits, but also psychological traits. A couple classes ago, when I was talked about the circadian rhythms and why it would be good to sleep at night. Evolutionary psychology is much, much more than this. So I sort of like throw this out to give an idea about why this type of function might be important. But true evolutionary psychology isn't just trying to guess, why might people sleep at night? Oh, I have a good theory. It's something that's involved in creating predictions that we can test. So it's sort of hard to test that prediction that I made about the circadian rhythms. But we can test other predictions. If genes want to propagate themselves, if the genes, if evolution is based on which genes are most successful in getting themselves passed on, then I should want to help people that have more similar genes more than I want to help strangers. And if you look at how people behave in families, they're more likely to help family members than they are to help strangers. And they're more likely to help people from their towns and their communities who, a long time ago, before the globalization of the world, shared a lot more similar genes than they do now, where you have lots and lots of foreigners coming. So you can make predictions in testing. All right, anyway. Yeah?
This common ancestor, is it like all living organisms or only us and the animals?
All living organisms.
All of them?
All living organisms.
Bacteria, viruses, and...
That's, I'm not so sure about how the viruses fit in. There's some questions about whether viruses are actually alive. They do some of the things that living organisms do. They reproduce, they respond to their environment, but there are other things that are a bit different. I'm not a biologist, so I can't really express what those differences are. Check Wikipedia. But yeah, the idea is that humans are derived from the same thing that redwoods are. But that, like humans and apes, our common ancestor is much more close than the common ancestor, close in time, than the ancestor between humans and redwood trees, right? So the idea is that we all came from some single-celled organism. And the single-celled organism in different environments developed different adaptations. Some started photosynthesizing, sunlight. These became plants. Others started eating the things that were photosynthesizing, right? These became animals, right? But yeah, the idea is not just humans and animals are related, but all human life is related. I'm sorry, all life is related. Okay, so if we have this idea that we share genes and we share traits and we have this common ancestor, then we have this idea that we might share common processes. What is a process? Process is something that it's something that performs a function. If I want to process a report, what do? Like I enter some data, I press enter, right? A process is a way of transforming information, of taking one thing and doing something with it. So there's this idea, this general process approach, which is an evolutionary approach, and it says that we have these really simple mechanisms that our behaviors are made up of. So we have the ability to remember, we have the ability to pay attention, and we have these basic components, the ability to remember, the ability to pay attention, that we then should share with animals. So we should see these general processes available in other species. So comparative psychology, what they do is they look at different species and they compare them. And they see how species are similar and how they differ. So, animal models. Lots of times to understand general processes like learning or memory or language, we use animals. Why would we use animals? Well, one, they're theoretically justified because of what theory? If it wasn't for this theory, we wouldn't be able to say that we should have anything in common with animals. The common ancestor, which is based on the theory of evolution. That's right. So we're justified in using animals because we believe that we're related to the animals through common ancestors. Right? So what are some benefits of using animal models? If I want to study memory, why might I use rats and pigeons instead of people?
It's sometimes impossible to work on people.
Why would it be impossible to work on people? Ethical issues, right? So remember when I talked about adopting kids? We're going to assign half of them to be abused and half of them not to be abused? This is really an unethical thing. I would argue even with animals, there are some ethical considerations here. Different people, some people might say this is something important to do. Other people should say, no, absolutely not. But we can do things with animals that we can't do with humans. So here, we can raise them from birth. People use rats that are cloned. There's huge ethical debates about cloning people. But rats, they're cloned all the time. We implant electrodes into rats' brains to see what they do. Remember when I talked about the rats that stimulated themselves? Oh, that dopamine's good. Oh, that dopamine's good. It would be very difficult to get something like that approved if you were going to do it with humans. It's also less likely that they're going to try to manipulate their responses. So if I ask people questions like, hey, are you a racist? No, he says. Is he a racist? We don't know. We need to find other ways of measuring racism because he can be lying, right? He knows that I don't like racists. So he wants me to like him, so he says, no, I'm not a racist. Or maybe he doesn't care a hoot about me, but, society more generally, I don't want to be known as racist, so no, absolutely not. The animals are less likely to, lie or try to manipulate how they respond in order to make the experimenter happy. All right, so how can we determine how similar humans are to non-human animals? What we need to do is go back to the operationalization. Right? We need to operationalize what these things are. What does operationalize mean? Do you guys remember? Back in the first part of the class. Defining the operations, right? Operations, operationalize. Defining the operations to measure or manipulate something. So if we want to talk about culture, do we have culture? Do animals have culture? We need to figure out a way to define what culture is and how we can measure it. Now, some of this is tricky. It can be controversial. Some people might think that, it's inappropriate to ask whether animals have religion. Or they might say, no, I think your operationalization of religion is completely crazy. Right? So that you might need to, you might not agree with how people operationalize things, so you might try to operationalize things different depending on what you think is going on. So emotion, how can we operationalize emotion? I mean, with humans, we often do this with Likert scales. On a scale of 1 to 5, how happy are you today? How sad are you? How jealous are you? Have you ever experienced, or how much have you experienced the following emotions? Jealousy, never, to always. These are ways that we operationalize it when we're looking at people, but how could we operationalize it without using questions like that? Because honestly, we can't give questions like that to a mouse or to a chimpanzee. Here's my Likert scale, here you go. Tell me which one, how much you feel happy right now, goldfish. How's it going to do it? We need something else, right? So what could we use instead?
Cry or also maybe brain.
So we can look, you said crying?
Yes, and also we can look at the brain function.
Yeah, so we could look and maybe do something to them. See, we could hurt them. Right? And see if they cry or if they show fear, right? So if you own a dog and you kick your dog regularly, is your dog going to run up to you when you get home? Oh yeah, I'm happy to see. What is it going to do? It's going to run away, right? That suggests it has fear potential.
Tails. We can look at their tails.
At their
Tails.
At their tails. Yeah. If it's wagging, maybe it's happy. When its fur goes out like cats, right? We have these things that look like emotion. So there's this website called busherchimp.com. And Bush, he was popular with some people, not so popular with others. I think this was made by someone who didn't like him very much. Anyway, so what they did is they compared Bush's emotional range with the emotional range of chimpanzees. Look at that happy chimpanzee. Oh, look at the good father. Oh, angry monkeys. Ooh, isn't that sweet? So, if you look at non-human animals, you see evidence that they display something that looks a lot like emotion. Yeah, they don't say, I'm happy right now, verbally, but they do other things, like tail wagging or smiling, right? How about the self-awareness? I think, therefore I am, right? What's the Latin for that? Ergo cogito ergo sum. Something like that. I think, therefore I am. Animals have this? Do they have this awareness of themselves? Or are they just like robots that have been programmed? Hungry now? Let's find food. Tired now? Let's go sleep. How do you know?
Because if you, for example, if you harm them, the next time they're going to okay, or in psychological term, if they are punished, okay, if they are negatively punished, or if they're
punished, just say if they're punished.
Yeah,
That's good.
If they're punished,
Yeah.
then they're going to learn not to do that.
That's right. So if they're punished, they're going to learn not to do that thing. But what he's saying is that demonstrates self-awareness. And I would say not necessarily. You don't have to be aware. This can happen automatically without you even knowing it. Right? You don't have to know that you're learning to blink when you sit down in front of that, puff of air at the optometrist. You just do it. Right? So there have been some tests using mirrors and paint or chalk to look at self-awareness. What do these tests involve? Take an animal and you do what with it?
Make it look to the mirror.
So you have a mirror in the animal's environment. And what do animals do when there's a mirror in their environment? This is actually really cool. Someone, he was trying to get pictures of some type of apes at a zoo. And people would bang on the glass, ooh, look over here, to try to get their attention, and no one would ever get any pictures of them. So what he did, he turned his iPhone around, because it has the camera facing the same way as the screen, and so it's showing the monkeys what it's seeing. So then they see that, they're like, oh, that's kind of cool, let's go check that out. Right? He got some really, really amazing footage. Now, this doesn't necessarily indicate self-awareness. It indicates maybe that they perceive something that's different in their environment. Right? Maybe they're perceiving another monkey that's there. I remember being a kid in front of a mirror and imagining, what if there's really another person and the mirror is like a different world and we're both coming at the same time, right? As opposed to that's me in the mirror. It was there's another little boy that looks just like me who's doing everything that I'm doing flipped around, right? So how do you demonstrate self-awareness? Teenagers demonstrate self-awareness really, really well.
Acting against your group, if you're doing something else than what other people do around, in an animal group.
But even if someone's acting differently from others, it may have just been that they were experiencing different punishments and reinforcements. That's why they're acting different. Perhaps. What do teenagers do when they have a big zit? They scratch it. When they see a zit in the mirror, are they like, oh dude, you have a zit? No, they're like, ugh. Right? They demonstrate an awareness. They have an understanding that it's on themselves. Or maybe not a zit. They have, some dirt on their face, so they wash it off. Right? And they respond appropriately. They know where it is. So what happens when you do this type of test with some animals? So you take a little paint and you put it on their foreheads. And there's a mirror, and what do? Some of the animals, they demonstrate self-awareness by, instead of reaching out to try to touch it, they reach to themselves to try to touch it. Which demonstrates that they have some idea that this thing that I'm seeing over there is actually on me, and I'm over here. Does that make sense? How about language?
But isn't that only about learning how a mirror works?
It could be about learning about how a mirror works, but if you're really learning about how a mirror works, you learn that it's reflecting what it's seeing, and you learn that the thing in the mirror is you as opposed to someone else. Right? It could just be, if you've seen some movies, they have twins, and they'll come in on the side of the door, and they'll both do the same things, move slowly. Right? But you can actually reach out and touch that other person. So if you thought that, there's this other being behind the mirror and it had something on its head, you're not going to reach out and try to touch it because you know that when you reach out, it will stop you from touching it. Right? So I don't know, maybe this is actually operationalized wrong. Maybe it's not an understanding of yourself, but it's an understanding of the mirror world. In which you know that if you go to wipe something off, you know that they are going to wipe something off too. In this case, I would like to employ Occam's razor. Does anyone know what Occam's razor is?
Simple.
Yeah, the simplest explanation is usually best. So to me, it seems much more intuitive to say aha, I see that, I'm wiping it off of me. It's something on me, as opposed to aha, there's something over there that has, you know, a dot on his head. If I do this, then he'll wipe his off. Does that make sense? So, yay for Occam's razor. Language. Language is symbolic. We use symbols to communicate ideas. 1 means beer. 2 means icky. We have different symbols, and they both mean this, which actually is incorrect, because this is a symbol as well. Right? They symbolize this idea about what something is. Two-ness. It communicates information. I forget who said it, but someone said, like, dolphins do this. They communicate information. Whales do this. Honeybees do this. They find some pollen, and they go back to their hive, and then they go boop, 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 which means there's good pollen over there 2 kilometers away, right? They communicate information. There's a grammar. It's generative. We put certain words before other words, and we can create new sentences that we have never heard before. Like, Ubedullah thought that I thought that Ubedullah thought that I thought that Ubedullah thought that I thought that Ubedullah was smart. Right? Have any of you ever heard that before? I would guess probably not, right? I was able to create something that I've never heard before. It's generative. They have some interesting experiments with some primates, non-human primates, where they have taught them symbols and grammar, and they can express new ideas that they've never been shown before. People with language, there's an idea about the critical period. You have to be exposed to it at a certain point in your life or you lose it. Same thing happens with some songbirds. If they're not exposed to the songs from their species, they won't develop the singing ability normally. Art. People use art to attract mates. Look at my, beautiful paintings. It's demonstrating my wealth. It's demonstrating my fitness. Fitness is your ability to survive and pass on your genes. It's creative. So these, birds, and I think this was probably an elephant or maybe a pig. They're a lot like Little Wayne or Little John, one of these little guys. Right? They're demonstrating that they're fit. They have money. They're demonstrating creativeness. And they do this to attract mates. Culture. So culture, not only is there the shared idea about how to behave, but it's a way to transmit information down over generations. Right? This is why our culture is similar to the culture that existed 20 or 100 years ago. Sure, our culture is different. Our culture is evolving as well. But there are a lot of similarities over time. Shared attitudes and practices. So you see the primates in both instances taking a hot tub in the snow. Tools. So are humans the only ones that use tools? No. You have this orangutan spearfishing, and this isn't just an opposable thumb phenomenon. Other animals that don't have opposable thumbs use tools too. So crows, no opposable thumbs. They use sticks to get mites and ants out so they can eat them. Sea otters, they collect, not oysters, but like clams and shellfish from the bottom, and then they get rocks to break them open. They're using tools. Warfare, murder, mourning, and morality. Just like people go around and kill each other for more land, more food, more mates, chimpanzees do the same thing. When gorillas' offspring die, they demonstrate an understanding that something is missing. They show some emotion and also some type of morality. Look at the community coming out to support the loss of this one individual. Bonobos. Oh, these are really interesting. Apes. So the bonobos, they have sex way beyond procreation. They have fun. They do it to bond with individuals. Just like a lot of people come and do handshakes, bonobos will do like genital shakes when they come across other bonobos. It's like, hey, how are you doing? I trust you. You trust me. Okay, let's do our thing. They do it in exchange for resources. So chimpanzees, there are chimpanzee prostitutes. They will exchange sex for meat. It's prostitution. It's not just heterosexual. The bonobos, oh boy, they're wild. They're heterosexual, they're homosexual, they're bisexual, they're basically everything. Religion. So, dogs, they show reverence and faith to a good, benevolent master. You treat the dog well, the dog shows you this respect. Just like people show respect for whoever they believe is God. They show faith that their master is going to come back home. They stand by the door waiting for you. It's a demonstration of faith. They bring you offerings, just like people give offerings. They show guilt when they do something wrong. The dog poops on the floor and acts guilty. Oh, I'm sorry, I have sinned. Please forgive me. They show praise. They worship their masters. Lots of these things are similar to what people do in organized religions. Pets even own pets. And they use drugs too. The only thing that I haven't found any evidence for, so it's not on the slide because of this, I would love to find out. But I think something that differentiates humans from non-human animals is that we cook. You take our meat, you add a little bit of sumac, you add a little bit of salt, you add a little bit of heat. We take some things, we add them together and eat them. Animals, I don't know of evidence that they do this. There might be some out there, but this might be the one way that humans are really different from animals. Yeah.
But in early history, humans didn't cook. The cooking period.
It developed over time. Yeah. So maybe this is just a cultural thing. So maybe we can teach the bonobos how to cook and see if that can get transmitted down culturally. All right. Next class, we're going to have the exam.